Last month, we were at an old research base in Alaska. It was meant to be a study of Arctic ecosystems. I'm a marine biologist, so I thought it'd be fun. But when I got there, everything felt cold, even the air. As I stepped off the plane, I felt something heavy in my chest. On our first day, the wind howled around the base like it was alive. Inside, the smell was musty and tasted stale. My hands shook from the cold and maybe fear. My colleagues were busy setting up instruments, chatting about what we might discover. I tried to focus too, but an unease crawled up my spine. It was too quiet. By the third day, we were digging for samples beneath the base. That's when I found a narrow tunnel. I thought it was just an old maintenance shaft. I crawled inside, and the air got even colder. I swear I heard something. It was like whispers, but I brushed it off. I didn't want to seem scared. As we kept digging, everything got stranger. We uncovered walls with markings that looked odd like symbols. I didn't know what they meant, and my excitement faded into worry. The hole felt deeper than it should, and I felt isolated. Then came the dreams. They weren't just dreams, they were nightmares. I saw shadows moving. I woke up in a sweat, gasping for air. Sometimes, I heard whispers that called my name. I felt dizzy, like I was being watched, even inside my own bed. Something was off with my colleagues too. They were restless. I caught one of them staring into corners, mumbling to himself. When I asked if they felt strange, they laughed it off. That didn't sit right with me. I was worried we were losing touch. I couldn't shake the feeling I had to go back to that tunnel. I mustered the courage and headed towards it one evening. The cold air hit me like a wave. Shadows crept along the walls as I got closer. My heart raced. What was I walking into? The whispers grew louder, almost urgent. I stepped into the tunnel, and that's when I felt that something was waiting. I turned to look behind me, thinking someone was there, but it was just darkness. The whispers echoed louder, twisting around me. I felt paralyzed, stuck between fear and curiosity. The tunnel felt alive. I heard a word my name whispered again. Then came the urge to run. But I stood there, frozen. What if I was walking into something I couldn't escape? My head was spinning. I wanted to call out, to scream, but nothing came. Something in that tunnel, something old and forgotten, felt like it was reaching for me. I was supposed to be searching for marine samples, but I think we found something far worse. I never did go back. I don't plan to. What we discovered still haunts me. I wish I could forget it, but it all feels too real. The next day, I tried to shake off the dread. My colleagues were busy with their routine, but I couldn't focus. My mind kept drifting back to the tunnel. I felt like it was calling me, and I hated myself for feeling that way. I convinced myself it was just a maintenance shaft, nothing more. But that didn't help. At lunch, I caught Jenna, one of the biologists, staring blankly at her food. She hadn't touched her sandwich. Instead, her eyes darted around the room, as if looking for something in the shadows. I asked her if she was all right. She nodded, but her hands trembled slightly. Just tired, she said. Her voice was steady, but I knew something was off. The uneasy feeling returned. After lunch, I decided to take a walk outside. Maybe the fresh air would clear my head. I stepped out, and the chill cut into my skin. The white landscape glimmered under the weak sunlight, yet everything felt strangely muted. As I walked past the research base, I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows were moving. Suddenly, I heard a faint whisper. It felt close, almost right behind me. I turned around, but it was just the empty expanse. My heart raced. I shook my head and pulled my jacket tighter. This was getting ridiculous. I needed to focus on the work. When I returned to the base, I found Jenna in the lab, fiddling with her microscope. I walked up to her and asked if she wanted to join me in examining the samples we gathered. She looked up, but her gaze drifted to the window. Maybe later, she murmured. I sighed and headed to the lab alone. As I sorted through the samples, I found a lump of black stone. It was like anything else we had collected. Uneven and jagged, it had strange lines running through it, those same markings I had seen in the tunnel. My skin prickled. How had we missed this before? I held it closer, straining to understand it. Was it a rock? Or something more? The whispers echoed in my mind, growing louder. I dropped the stone, and it clattered against the countertop. Jenna appeared at the door, her face pale. What's wrong? I found this. I pointed to the stone, trying to mask the fear in my voice. She stepped closer, a confused look on her face. But the moment she saw it, her eyes widened in horror. Where did you get that? She gasped, her voice shaking. I blinked rapidly, unsure how to respond. The air felt charged, as if something heavy hung between us. I don't know, I stammered. It was in the samples. But look at the markings. They are similar to what we saw in the tunnel. Jenna stepped back as if the stone had burned her. We need to get rid of it. Now. My stomach churned. The way she recoiled only amplified my own anxiety. What if it's important? But I knew. Deep down, I already understood. It wasn't important. It was a threat. And it was more than just a stone. Then everything shifted. The lights flickered. A shadow crossed the room. I turned just in time to see it slip behind me. My breath caught in my throat. Jenna. I called out, but she was frozen, staring wide-eyed. That's when I saw it, a figure standing in the shadows, watching us. And in a heartbeat, the whispers started again, louder and more frantic. Run! I screamed. But was I running away from the figure, or something even worse? I didn't hesitate. I dashed past Jenna, who still stood frozen. My instincts screamed at me to escape. I slammed the lab door shut behind me, the sound echoing through the corridor. My legs moved without thought, leading me toward the exit, but a chill ran down my spine. I couldn't leave Jenna behind. I turned back. Jenna. We need to go. Where? Her voice was high and shrill. I dreaded the confusion in her eyes. Any place but here, I urged. I glanced back toward the lab. The shadows shifted again, darker this time. The figure was gone, but I could feel it lingering. Jenna finally moved, following me down the hall. We sprinted to the common area. Colleagues were there, oblivious to our panic, chatting and laughing, as if nothing was wrong. I shoved through them, desperate to find safety. Did you see it? I whispered to Jenna. She shook her head, eyes darting around. I wish I didn't, she replied, her voice trembling. The whispers grew louder in my mind, almost drowning out the conversations around us. We have to warn them, I said. They need to know about the stone. No. Jenna grabbed my arm. You can't. If they know, if it gets out, her panic was contagious. I could see it morphing into something darker. Why not? They have to stop. She hissed, glancing around as if someone was eavesdropping. The look in her eyes sent a jolt of fear through me. Trust me. Just get out. We don't understand this. I wanted to argue, but the weight in her tone silenced me. We turned toward the entrance, but the exit felt miles away. I felt trapped. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, this time more violently. The laughter ceased, replaced by a heavy silence. I could see confusion spreading as everyone turned their heads toward the source of the disturbance. What is happening? Someone muttered. I caught Jenna's gaze. Her fear was palpable, her body tense. That's when a loud crash echoed from the direction of the lab. I jerked my head up. Whatever had haunted our thoughts had just made its presence known. "Run!" I shouted again, perhaps more for myself than for anyone else. But nobody budged. The whispers intensified, and the shadows began to crawl back into the room. They twisted into a shapeless form, looming larger and more defined in the dim light. Panic gripped me. I pulled Jenna by the sleeve, dragging her toward the corridor. But she hesitated, her eyes fixed on the dark shape. "We can't leave them. They won't listen. We have to go." As we reached the door, the figure from the lab lurched into view. It was everything we had feared. I could almost feel its breath on my neck. My stomach dropped. I shoved Jenna outside, and we stumbled onto the icy ground, almost falling. We were safe for now, but the whispers chased us, swirling in the cold wind. I didn't want to look back, but something made me. What was that thing? Why was it after us? The questions felt endless, and as I caught my breath, I realized something crucial. Whatever we had unleashed was no longer confined to the shadows. At that moment, I knew it was only the beginning. The horror we faced wasn't just in the depths of the tunnel. It was out in the world, and we had just opened the door. The icy air stung my face as Jenna and I stood outside. The sound of our hurried breaths filled the silence, but it felt wrong. Darkness loomed above, heavy and foreboding. I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone, even in the open snow. "We need to get away from here," I said, glancing back at the building. The figure. The whispers. They still echoed in my mind like a never-ending nightmare. Jenna looked pale, her hands trembling. "But where do we go? We can't just run aimlessly." I raked my fingers through my hair, trying to think. "There's a forest nearby. We can hide there until we figure this out." My heart raced as I scanned the surroundings. The shadows seemed to stretch and pulse behind us, beckoning. "Do you really think it can't follow us?" she asked, her voice shaky that I bit my lip. "I don't know. But we can't just stand here." I started toward the tree line, pulling Jenna along with me. Every crunch of snow under our feet felt like a countdown. The darkness shifted in the periphery of my vision, teasing, lurking just out of sight. Once we reached the trees, I tried to catch my breath. The thick trunks offered some protection from the looming threat, but I felt no relief. "We need to talk," I said, my voice low. "What did you see in there?" I only saw shadows and the stone." But when I touched it, her voice trailed off, and a shudder ran through her. It was like it was alive. I frowned. "What do you mean?" "It felt warm. And then those voices like they were trying to get me to stay," she confessed. "I don't know how to explain it." The whispers from the lab began taunting me again. My skin crawled. "We need to tell someone. They have to know. This is bigger than us." "No." Jenna shouted, her eyes wide. "You don't understand. We need to keep this to ourselves. If we tell others, it'll spread like wildfire. We can't let it get out." "Jenna, you're being unreasonable." I snapped, frustration flooding me. But deep down, I felt the weight of her fear too. "We can't handle this alone." Before she could argue, a rustling in the bushes nearby caught our attention. My breath quickened. Something was moving toward us. The shadows shifted, almost as if they were alive, blending with the darkness around us. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. Jenna nodded, looking terrified. We turned slowly, hearts pounding in our chests. That's when I saw it, two glowing eyes piercing through the underbrush, not far from where we stood. Panic surged through me. "We need to go." I grabbed her hand, pulling her deeper into the trees. But before we could take another step, a low growl rumbled from the shadows. "I think it's here," I breathed, the weight of my fear crashing down on me. Just when I thought we had a moment to regroup, a branch snapped behind us. I spun around, ready to face whatever horror awaited. Then everything went dark. I jolted awake, my heart racing. The darkness felt thick, wrapping around me like a heavy blanket. I tried to sit up, but my head spun. Where was I? Everything was cold, too cold. I blinked, but the darkness didn't relent. Jenna? I croaked, but my voice was swallowed by the oppressive silence. Panic clawed at my throat. Had we found something in the woods? Suddenly, I felt a tug on my arm. I turned toward the warmth, but it only made me more confused. The darkness shifted again, and a faint light flickered in the distance. Focusing on it, I saw Jenna's form against the backdrop of what looked like ancient stone. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice strained. "I think so," I replied, slowly raising myself off the ground. My hands brushed against the rough surface beneath me. It was cold and damp, like being in a cave. The stone pulsed slightly, confirming my fear that the bizarre presence from the lab had followed us into this underground lair. "We need to get out of here," I whispered, glancing back at the path behind us. It was too dim to see if we had company, but the growl lingered in my mind like a threat. "I'm not sure we can," Jenna said, her voice quivering. "This place feels wrong. It's almost like it's alive." I nodded, the same dread spiraling in my gut. "You felt it too." The flickering light dimmed, and shadows crept closer. I stepped toward Jenna, instinctively shielding her as the darkness seemed to reach for us. "What do we do?" "I think it might be a tunnel. It leads somewhere," she said, pointing to the faint light. I saw movement near there right before everything went dark. "Movement?" I echoed, dread pooling in my stomach. "What could be lurking down here?" She nodded, biting her lip. "I'm not sure." But I think before she could finish, a loud crash echoed through the tunnel, cutting her off. My heart leapt into my throat as I stumbled backward. "Run!" I shouted, grabbing her hand tighter than before. We dashed toward the light, adrenaline pushing us forward. The shadows swirled behind us, a living entity that seemed to be chasing us down the tunnel. As we neared the flickering light, I could see it more clearly, a small alcove with strange markings on the stone walls. But I had no time to inspect it. I could hear the growling again, closer this time filled with malice. "Keep going," I urged Jenna. Our feet echoed against the cold stone, urgency hammering in my chest. The light flickered one last time before a rusted door swung open, revealing what we both feared: something was waiting just beyond the threshold, waiting to pull us back into the darkness. "What now?" Jenna gasped, her eyes wide with terror. That's when I realized the truth. We were not just escaping, we were being drawn into a trap. My breath caught. I didn't just have to face whatever was behind that door. I had to figure out how we got here and fast. What force had led us into this nightmare? And were we ready to confront it when the time came? I caught a glimpse of movement in the dark, and in the next instant, I felt something sharp brush against my leg. I froze, knowing we had only moments left to decide. And then, the whispering began again. The whispering faded into a menacing silence that felt even worse. My eyes darted from Jenna to the doorway. We had to choose, face the unknown or let the shadows catch us. "Jenna, we need to move," I hissed, gripping her hand tighter, urgency rippling through me. But she hesitated, her gaze locked on the doorway. "Do you hear that?" she whispered, fear etching her features. I strained to listen. Faint, raspy breaths seemed to seep from the darkness beyond the door. It was like something was waiting, calculating. "We don't have time. We can't stay here." With an awkward pull, I dragged her forward. In that split second, I felt a rush of cold air as whatever was in the shadows stirred. Then, a low growl rumbled closer, echoing ominously. "Go!" I shouted, bolting through the doorway without a second thought. We stumbled into what looked like an adjoining room, dimly lit by cracks in the stone above. The air was thick and stale. I turned, and my heart sank. The door slammed shut behind us with a deafening thud. We were trapped. Where are we? Jenna's voice trembled, the weight of our situation pressing heavily on her. I looked around. There were symbols carved into the stone walls, similar to those in the alcove where we had almost sought refuge. They twisted and turned, their shapes unsettling against the flickering light. It was almost as if they were alive, pulsating slightly as I felt a shiver crawl up my spine. I don't know, I mumbled, my thoughts racing. It looks like some kind of chamber. I stepped closer to the wall, tracing one of the symbols with my fingers. It felt warm to the touch, which was unnerving. What do you think they mean? I can't even think right now. Jenna exclaimed, glancing over her shoulder. We can't stay in here like this. We're not safe. That thing, whatever it is, could follow us. I nodded, my thoughts churning. This room might hold some answers, but the shadows were already closing in on us, too. We have to find another way out. Just then, the ground beneath our feet vibrated with a low hum, accompanied by the whispers growing louder. They swirled around us, a cacophony of voices, noises that echoed our fears and doubts. I couldn't make out any words, but I felt their intent, urging me, enticing me to listen. Close your eyes. I yelled, throwing my hands over my ears. Don't let them in. Jenna did the same, but the whispers seemed to burrow inside me. We need to break the connection, I breathed, fighting the disorienting haze filling my mind. Suddenly, the flickering light surged into brightness, illuminating a door on the far side of the room. Look! I pointed, half relieved, half frightened. With a frantic tug on Jenna's sleeve, we dashed toward it, but as we approached, the whispers shifted, molding into a single voice that echoed within me. Stay with us. My heart screamed in protest, but I pressed on, forcing myself to believe there was an escape waiting for us. I reached for the door only to find it locked tight, with dark energy thrumming through its surface. Push! Jenna shouted, panic creeping back into her voice. With every ounce of strength we had left, we rammed against it. The whispering intensified, blending into an agonizing wail. And just as I felt the darkness close in, the door jolted open, revealing a blinding light that I had no idea what lay beyond, but the choice was clear. We had to enter. Now! I yelled, and we plunged into the light just as the whispers erupted into screams behind us. Everything went silent, but for how long? The light enveloped us, blinding and warm. I stumbled forward, still clutching Jenna's hand, unsure of what to expect. As my vision adjusted, I took in our surroundings. We stood on a narrow ledge, overlooking a vast, eerie cavern. Stalactites hung from the ceiling like sharpened teeth, and the smell of damp earth filled the air. The ground below us was littered with shadows, pooling in dark corners where the light from the passage we had come through could not reach. Is this another cave? Jenna whispered, her voice trembling as she peered over the edge. It looks like it, I replied, the fear creeping back in. But there's more to this place. Before I could process, my attention was drawn to symbols similar to those in the chamber behind us. They glowed faintly across the cavern walls, pulsating with an otherworldly energy. I felt a pull, an urgency to understand what they meant, but I hesitated. It felt dangerous to engage with whatever this place might hold. A low rumble echoed through the chamber, causing dust to rain down from above. My heart raced. We need to find a way out of here. I scanned the cavern, searching for signs of an exit or any indication of where we might be. Then, I saw a narrow archway on the far side, partially obscured by shadows. That way. I pointed, and Jenna nodded, her expression a mix of fear and determination. As we stepped closer, the whispers returned, dripping through the air like venom. Come, closer, be one of us. The words twisted around us, sending chills down my spine. I shook my head, trying to drown them out. Stay focused. I shouted, pushing ahead. Jenna followed, but her breathing was uneven. I could sense the fear rising in her. In my peripheral vision, I caught movement. Shadows darted between the stalagmites, quick and elusive. I stopped, my instincts screaming at me to retreat. "Jenna, did you see that?" "What?" she asked, glancing back. "Something moved," I said, eyes darting. "We're not alone." Before Jenna could respond, the rumbling grew louder, shaking the ground beneath us. A figure emerged from the darkness, its form indistinct but menacing. It loomed at the edge of the light, partially hidden but undeniably there. Panic surged through me. "Run!" I yelled, grabbing Jenna's arm and dragging her toward the archway that we sprinted, the figure's growl echoing behind us, resonating in the walls. The whispers crescendoed into a terrifying chorus, urging me to stop, to turn around. I could feel the darkness clawing at my back, desperate to pull me in. We reached the archway, breathless and shaking. I pushed through, half expecting to be snatched back into the abyss. Instead, we burst into a new passageway, its smooth walls gleaming under an unnatural light. But there was no time to rest. "Where do we go now?" Jenna panted, glancing over her shoulder. I didn't answer right away. I was still reeling from the encounter. But then I saw it glimmering at the end of the corridor was a set of stairs, spiraling downward into a deeper darkness. "That might lead us out," I said, urging her forward. Just as we reached the first step, a loud crash echoed from the cavern behind us. The ground shook violently. "Hurry, Jenna!" But in the chaos, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still with us. Something that had followed us into the light. As we descended, two thoughts crashed into my mind: we had escaped one danger only to tumble into another, and whatever was down there wasn't finished with us yet. What awaited us in that darkness? The stairs spiraled down into a thick darkness. With each step, the air grew heavier, almost suffocating. I turned to Jenna, who had fallen a step behind. Her eyes were wide, shining with fear, but she steadied herself and moved closer. "Do you think it's safe down there?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," I admitted, feeling dread settle in my stomach. "We have to keep going. We can't go back." The further down we went, the more the whispers returned. They weren't just in the air but seemed to wrap around us, crawling under my skin. Join us," they echoed. I shook my head, trying to block them out. I wished I could understand what they were saying, but a part of me feared it. Jenna looked at me with wide eyes, and I knew she could hear them too. I quickened my pace, desperate to reach the bottom. Suddenly, my foot slipped on the damp step. I stumbled, but Jenna grabbed my arm just in time. "Careful!" she exclaimed, her grip tight. "Thanks," I said, catching my breath. Just then, we reached the final step and were thrust into a vast chamber. The room was expansive, illuminated by a soft blue light emanating from strange crystals embedded in the walls. They seemed to be pulsing in time with the whispers, creating a haunting melody that filled the space. My gaze swept across the room, and I was struck by sight of countless artifacts scattered around: tattered maps, rusted tools, and strange relics I couldn't begin to identify. "What is all of this?" Jenna breathed, stepping forward. I felt drawn toward the artifacts, but an unsettling thought chilled me. "What if this is a trap?" I said. "What if someone set this whole thing up?" Ignoring my warning, Jenna knelt by a peculiar object. It had an intricate design, almost like the symbols we had seen earlier. "Look at this," she urged. "It's a compass," but before she could finish, I heard it again. The growling. Only now it was much closer, echoing off the chamber walls. My heart raced as I turned to where the sound seemed to come from. Shadows began to shift near the entrance we had just come through, thick and dark. "We have to go," I shouted, grabbing Jenna's arm once more, but she wouldn't budge. "Wait, look," she said, pointing at the object in her hand. "The compass, it's moving." I gulped hard, excitement and fear battling within me. It swung wildly, spinning as if it was trying to point somewhere, beckoning us to follow. What does it mean? Just then, the growl erupted into a roar, and the shadows surged forward. I had no choice. "Jenna, now!" I yelled, and we dashed toward the far side of the chamber, away from the entrance. As we ran, I could hear the whispers transform into a terrible wail, the whole chamber vibrating with energy. The compass continued to guide us, pulling us deeper into the room. That's when I saw it. A door, half open, shimmering with a faint light just past the crystal formations. "Over there!" I yelled, but Jenna hesitated again, glancing back. "Will it lead us out?" she asked, anxiety shadowing her voice. "I don't know," I barked, urgency flooding my veins. "But it's better than staying here." We charged toward the door as the growls turned into furious howls behind us. The darkness seemed alive, ready to swallow us whole, and I realized it came from everything lodged in the shadows wherever we were not alone. Just as we reached the door, the shadows lunged. I threw myself forward, pulling Jenna with me, desperate to escape whatever horrors were hot on our trail. We stumbled through the door, barely clearing the threshold as it slammed shut behind us, cutting off the cacophony of growls and howls. The sudden silence was like a heavy weight pressing against my ears. I leaned against the door, panting, and glanced at Jenna. "What just happened?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I really don't know," I admitted, trying to collect my racing thoughts. I turned to take in our new surroundings. The room we had entered was smaller, illuminated by a radiant glow that seemed to pulse gently from the walls. Uneven stone surfaces created a rugged landscape, almost like the insides of a cave, and the air felt cleaner here, as if it had been untouched by whatever horrors lay outside. Jenna's attention was drawn to an altar in the center of the room. It was made from the same stone as the walls, and intricate carvings spiraled around its base. Arranged neatly on top were artifacts that made my skin crawl: bones, smaller trinkets, and a bound leather book whose cover was marked with the same symbols as the compass. "Is that?" Jenna pointed, her voice wavering. "Yeah, whatever that is, it looks ancient," I replied, stepping closer. I reached for the book, but Jenna grabbed my wrist. "Be careful. We don't know what this is or what might happen if we touch it." Her worry brought me back to reality. This place felt different, almost alive, and instinct told me to proceed with caution. We stood in silence for a moment, the weight of the unknown pressing down on us, when I noticed a thin beam of light breaking through a crack in the far wall. "What's over there?" I asked, gesturing toward it. Jenna squinted, following my gaze. "I don't know, but it could be another way out," she replied. "Or it could lead us deeper into whatever this is," I said. But the urge to investigate tugged at my curiosity. "We should check it out." As we moved closer, the room started to hum a low, resonating sound that filled the space. It felt comforting yet eerie, as if something was awakening from its slumber. I hesitated, glancing back at the altar. "Maybe we should look at the book first, or maybe the light leads us away from here," Jenna countered, her voice striving for reassurance. "We can always come back." That settled it. I nodded, forcing myself to focus on the crack in the wall. As we approached, the sound grew louder. A chill shot down my spine, and I could feel my heart racing again. The light seemed to dance as we got closer, illuminating strange glyphs etched along the wall. Before I could process what was happening, the ground shook beneath us, and the altar's carvings began to glow. The book lifted slightly into the air, quivering as if it held some kind of power. "Uh-oh," I muttered, inching back, but it was already too late. Just then, the crack in the wall widened, and a figure emerged, a silhouette against the light that surrounded it. "You shouldn't have come here," it said, the voice echoing off the stone before a deep laughter followed. Panic rose in my chest as I turned to Jenna, her face pale. "We need to go. Now." But as we backed away, the portal closed behind us. We were trapped, with nowhere to run. As I stood there, fear tearing at my insides, the figure stepped closer. It lacked any distinct features, just a shadow that seemed to billow and fold impossibly. "You've awakened what was sleeping," it hissed, its voice low and drenched in malice. I felt a wave of dread wash over me. Whatever we had disturbed was more significant than we could fathom. "Get back!" I shouted, clutching Jenna's arm as we stumbled backward. But the room's walls pulsed, and I realized we were surrounded. The ancient carvings on the altar radiated with a sickly light, pouring shadows into every crevice. Whispers swirled around us, thrumming against my ears like 1,000 panicked voices. "No!" Jenna yelled, her eyes wild with terror. "We have to get out. This isn't right." Instinct kicked in, and I turned to find another escape route. But the space felt different, alive yet stifling, closing in on us. Wherever we were, it was a nexus of something dark and ancient. "Look, the book!" I shouted, just as Jenna pointed toward it. The leather-bound tome hovered above the altar, swirling with energy. "Maybe it holds the key." I took a step toward it, intuition telling me it could either help or doom us, but the figure lunged forward, and the whispers coalesced into a single surge of sound. "You will join us. Your essence will feed our hunger." It stretched a shadowy limb toward us, the air thickening with dread. "Run!" I yelled, grabbing Jenna's hand again and darting toward the beam of light that had first drawn us in. As we sprinted, we could feel the darkness clawing at our backs, trying to reclaim what it had lost. The crack widened with each step, granting us but a fleeting moment of hope. "It's closing!" Jenna screamed. We leaped forward, just as the light began to flicker and dim. One last push, and we crashed through the gap, tumbling onto the cold, hard ground outside. We lay there, gasping for air, hearts pounding in our chests. Above us, the sky was a pale gray, shifting slowly into night. I looked around. The forest felt strangely different now, as if the shadows had receded but not entirely disappeared. The whispers faded into the wind, leaving us in an uneasy silence. "Are we safe?" Jenna asked, her voice faint and trembling. I didn't answer. I peered into the trees, where darkness still lingered. It felt as though something was waiting just beyond our sight, teasing at the edges of our understanding. But we had made it out, at least, for the moment, we were alive. "We need to get help," I finally said, struggling to my feet. "This can't go unreported. Whatever we found, whatever we unleashed, it can't stay hidden." But as I looked back toward the research base obscured in the tree-line, a chill crept up my spine. The building loomed ominously, shrouded in dark clouds, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it had eyes watching, waiting. "Do you think they felt it? The others?" I asked, my voice raw with worry. Jenna shook her head, her face pale. "It doesn't matter. We need to leave. Right now." As we began to walk, the uneasy silence was broken by distant echoes of laughter, and the whispers flickered again, just out of reach. I glanced back at the trees one last time. The shadows remained, lingering at the edges, reminding me that not all could be left behind. That I still wonder what truly lay beneath that research base, the tunnel, the stone with its unsettling markings, and the shadows that spoke my name. Were they a figment of our imagination? Or were we merely vessels for something ancient? I moved to a different city after that. Sometimes I wonder if the whispers still haunt the place, if the shadows remain, waiting for someone to stumble upon them again. But mostly, I try not to think about it.